What is up, everybody? It is Stickfigure here, and today we are doing another overview of one of the pieces of equipment that I use for my recording and streaming setup. This is probably going to be the oldest piece of hardware in my collection of everything that we go over, but it's also one of my favorite. I love this thing. This thing is so cool. The audio interface that I use to be able to use my condenser microphone, this right here, a Blue Spark, and also do my A to D conversion as well as, headphones out and monitors out, is the Apogee Duet Firewire, the first gen Apogee Duet. First thing, I find this little piece of hardware to be absolutely gorgeous. It's so well designed and quality made, and honestly feels like something that you would usually find on an Apple device, which makes sense because from my understanding, Apogee actually worked with Apple while designing this device. So not only does it look and feel like an Apple device, it integrates into macOS just flawlessly and seamlessly. It's great. On the top of the device, you will find a Firewire 400 connection, as well as what looks like a VGA port, but it's not actually. It's the port where the breakout cable goes to, that connects to all the ins and outs that go into the device. And I will go into all of that in a bit. On the bottom of the device, you will find a 1/4-inch headphone jack. This is really just designed for headphones, and I use it all the time. For monitors or speakers, there is a different output that we will go into later, but for headphones, it works great. It's right there on the front, so if it's on your table, you just plug right in. You also find two little LED lights. Those are to show you if phantom power is turned on either of the two XLR inputs. Underneath the device, you'll just find the sticker with all the serial number and hardware number and all the other, legalese that goes along with that, as well as 4 little footy devices, the footies that, little thing, but they're really grippy, and it's great for such a small device to prevent it from sliding around my desk. Right in the middle on the front, as you can see, there is a big digital knob. This is digital, so you can spin it either way infinitely and integrates really well into the software. It also acts as a button that you can press to switch between the different controls for, gain for different inputs as well as output. There are also 2 gain meters that just show you usually the 2 output volumes, but can also show you current input levels on any input, which is really cool. And they're really quick and in time, and I've never noticed any lag. Now for my least favorite part of the device, and it's a big one. It is the breakout cable. Whoever was in charge of designing the look and feel of the device was obviously not anywhere in the room when this part was designed. It's not great. So it goes into that VGA, or it kind of reminds me of serial input, but other way around, and then breaks out into all the different inputs and outputs. And all of them come in pairs of 2, so there's 2 XLR inputs, 2 1/4-inch inputs, and then 2 1/4-inch outputs. The first 2 are standard XLR inputs, and this is what I use the most often. The next 2 are line inputs that are by default 1/4-inch inputs, but came with these little 1/4-inch to RCA adapters, and I keep those in there just so I don't lose them. And usually if I'm using those line ins, it's because I'm trying to rip something off of, that's RCA, whether it's copying some records or cassettes or old, audio from a PS2 or something. Don't use them too often, but they work really well. And then finally are the 2 outputs, and they are 1/4-inch, and I use those to go right into my monitors and work fine as outputs. As you can tell, this breakout cable easily becomes just a complete spider web of cabling. It's not great. Usually I have it tucked behind my desk, so you can't really tell, but anytime I have to make any adjustments or anything, it's just they become tangled in themselves and any other cables around, and it's not great. But, I don't change it off too often, so I'll have it behind there and just let it be. Now, earlier you may have heard me mention Firewire 400. I didn't gloss over that accidentally. I know, and I did say 400. This is an older device and has an older connection. As I mentioned on the video that I did for my capture card, the computer I was using before my current one was a 2011 MacBook Pro. And on the MacBook Pro, you had USB 2.0, Firewire 800, and Thunderbolt. So one thing that drew me to this card, not only was it quality, but the fact that it used Firewire. So I didn't have to worry about, the slowness on the USB 2.0. And it would free up those ports so I could just plug it right into the Firewire, which I wasn't using for much else. So one thing is that Firewire 800 is much faster than USB 2.0, and I know Firewire 400 is about the same. So I knew I was going to be getting about the same amount of speed, with the Firewire 400 adapter, but at least there would be no worry at all about having any kind of data bottleneck by going from a Firewire 400 to 800 as one of the faster connections on that computer. However, when I got my new computer last year, it's a 2018 Mac Mini, the only connections on it are USB 3.0 and Thunderbolt 3, which uses a USB-C connection. And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to use my audio interface on my new computer anymore because it was such an old connection. Firewire 400 to Thunderbolt 3 over USB-C. However, I figured out that I could make it work. So it's also kind of a mess of dongles. To make this device connect to my new computer, I take the Firewire 400 to 800 cable that came with the device, then connect that cable into a dongle that is Firewire 800 to Thunderbolt 1. I then connect this dongle into another dongle that connects Thunderbolt 1 into Thunderbolt 3 that uses the USB connection that my computer has. It's a lot, but it works. I've never had any issues with it at all since getting the device. No, just worked right away. That was one. I spent quite a bit of money on these dongles, so I was really worried, but it worked great. With this mess of dongles, along with the breakout cable, it really is just a mess of cabling. But, I hide it behind my monitor. I don't have to change things too often. I'm not doing anything too crazy with my audio recording. So it can just be, but it is kind of a lot. Onto the Apogee software that actually runs the device. The software that this device requires is called Apogee Maestro 2. And the way it interfaces with the Duet is actually really cool. It's really a cool setup. When you first open the software, you will see the device in the left panel. It will also list the name of your device along with the sample rate it is currently configured to record at, the clock source, and the system status. One cool thing about the sample rate is usually I'm recording, if I'm doing a lot of complex audio stuff with Logic or sometimes GarageBand, but I have Logic, so I use that. It will automatically update the sample rate in the Apogee Maestro software, so I don't have to go in there and adjust it manually. And just like that, you can hear it click. It makes a physical click when it's changing the sample rate. Under the top panel are the input, output, device settings, mixer, and system setup selections. As you can see in the input menu, it shows the faders and levels for 2 inputs. These can be adjusted between mic and instrument, along with 2 other specialized inputs that I've never ever really needed to use for anything. I've not tried them out, but they're there. Instrument will have the device look at the 1/4-inch inputs, and microphone will have it look at the XLR inputs. It's pretty straightforward. However, you can only have 2 active inputs at one time. So you can have 2 mics, 2 line inputs, or 1 of each. You can't have 4 in. But for what I do, that's really not a hindrance. I rarely have 2 inputs and usually just have 1. Under the levels is the phase switch button along with phantom power. Because the microphone that I use, this Blue Spark, is a condenser microphone, and also because I don't own any ribbon microphones or other specialty microphones that phantom power could hurt or break, I just usually leave this on all the time on the instrument 1, sometimes, or microphone 1. Sometimes I leave it on both because it doesn't really hurt anything. The gain on the microphones can either be changed by turning the knob physically on the device when you have the instrument that you or microphone that you want selected. You can go up and down with that, or you can just do it in the software. Because I have my interface kind of tucked away because of that mess of cables I mentioned earlier, I usually just change it in the software and it works fine. Output is pretty straightforward. It shows the levels for left and right output. I've never had a need to change the output from -10 dBV to instrument. Just like with the input, the physical device can also adjust this. Not much there. The device settings are fairly sparse, and I've really never changed any of these. By default, it works great. Same thing with the mixer. I've never really used this. The only time I could think that this would be handy would be, say, if you were in a live setting where you wanted this to be kind of like a capture card for video, but just for audio, where you were having inputs that also were going out in real time, and you wanted just levels for the output and input very quickly. Never really had to do that, but I could see where that would be useful for that. Finally, under system settings, the only thing you really can do is change the sample rate if you were using some software that didn't automatically integrate into the Maestro software like Logic did. OBS really doesn't have too in-depth of sample rate settings you can change, but if you're using something else that didn't change it, you could manually adjust it here. One issue I have run into recently is since upgrading my OS to Mac OS Catalina, is that if I don't use my computer, if I let it go to sleep for more than an hour or two and come back to it, the Maestro software will just be completely locked up. The interface will still work at the settings that I had it left on, but simply going in and force closing it and then reopening it works fine. It takes seconds. Kind of weird, but it is something that I've noticed since the most recent OS update, and I know that broke a lot of software, so I'm not really that surprised. One really cool thing that I have found with this device, and I know I touched on it briefly at the beginning, is the fact that this integrates so well into the macOS interface. So if I change the volume on my Mac settings or my keyboard, it will automatically adjust the output gain on the device, which is really cool because I know with some audio interfaces it doesn't do that, and you will have to physically, change the output volume or gain on the device itself. This just works with Mac OS perfectly. It will adjust the output just by changing the volume on the computer. Really cool. That's pretty much it. This device works seamlessly with Logic, GarageBand, and with OBS. It just, you select it like you would any other audio interface or source. It's just right there. I know I'm kind of doing this more as just a generic overview of the device, but a lot of the people who come to my channel are, interested in streaming or my past streams or how I do it or whatever. But with OBS, it's just, audio source. It's right there. Just like, or by default, if you have this as your default output device on your Mac, it'll just recognize it like that. Never had an issue. If you can't tell, I absolutely love this device. It's one of my favorite pieces of AV gear that I own. It's so cool the way it just works really well all the time. It's for having such an old, connection, and it is an older device. It sounds just so crystal clear. The preamps and the ADD conversion are just magnificent. It sounds so good, and I've never had a problem getting it to work with anything. It's just an amazing piece of hardware. So if you have a Mac and you're looking for, a cheaper audio interface and are willing to deal with all the dongles and the crazy breakout cable, I would highly suggest this device. It is really cool. It is Mac only, as I think I said earlier, and it just sounds really good. It's a way, if you have a nice microphone and maybe a cheap preamp or something, this would be a cheap, easy way of upgrading your system to have better ADD conversion and cleaner preamps. I know a few years ago, Apogee has released a newer version of the Duet. It looks similar, but a bit different, and I've heard good things about it. I've never personally used it myself. Weirdly, they've never upgraded it even further to do anything better than USB 2.0, so kind of weird. But until this device stops working or I can't use it anymore, I'm probably going to stick with the Duet Firewire. I really, really like this device. I cannot talk about it highly enough. But if you have any questions about it at all, or anything I have said today, if I've not been clear or anything, just let me know. Drop a comment, shoot me a message on any of my platforms, and I will respond, the best that I can. But I appreciate you watching, and if you do like the video, please like it. I hate being that person, but, growing channel. And if you like me doing these hardware overviews, I will continue doing them. I really like doing this kind of thing and doing breakdowns of all the stuff I use, because I'm really proud of some of the weird pieces of tech I've, gotten over the years. But till next time, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day, and see you next time. Bye.